Okay, so our question for today is, why are there no miracles of biblical proportion today? Why don't we experience them today? Okay. So it's a question, it's a fantastic question. And I think that different people that ask the question are actually coming from a different perspective. We're bothered by different things. We have a different objective that we may be looking for when we're asking that question. Okay, so what's behind the question? What's behind the question? We're looking for miracles of biblical proportion. This is a very timely story. The story goes of the rabbi of the city of Brisk, who shortly before Passover, before Pesach, and all the hustle, a woman comes in and says, "Rabbi, I have a question." He says, "Ask." She says, "I would like to know, may I halachically fulfill my obligation of the 4 cups? Instead of wine, I'm going to have milk. Does that work? That's my drink. That's my drink that I'm requesting. If that works, I know it should be something special. So can it be milk?" The rabbi's there with his student, and he tells her. He says, "Wait a minute." He runs to the back room. He comes back after about a minute and a half. He says, "Mrs. I must admit, and I apologize. What you asked me is a fantastic question. And it really does require time and effort. I don't have the time, and it's on me. I don't have the time to look into it. And therefore, because it is my fault that I'm not giving you just a straight answer, I'm going to just give you the money to buy milk." And he gives her amount of money that was significantly more than she needed. I'm sorry, to buy wine. Significantly more money than what was needed to buy wine. The woman leaves. She's on her way. The student goes to this rabbi, the rabbi of Brisk. He says, "Rabbi, what in the world just happened? Nobody says that milk works. Grape juice, but no milk. Why don't you just tell her straight up that milk doesn't work? There's nothing to check up." Rabbi says, "Do you not pay attention? A woman's asking if she can use milk. You realize it means she can't afford meat. She can't afford chicken. That's what's bothering her." He says, "I gave her," you have to know what's behind the question. "I gave her money because I know that she can't put together, based on her question, she can't put together money for the holiday." Okay, so back to what we're talking about here. So what's behind the question when we ask, why don't we experience miracles of biblical proportion? Well, some people might, sometimes, like the world today, we have a tremendous crisis. We feel like we need a miracle. At other times, we want to see the hand of God. They had it easy, our ancestors. Big deal to believe in God. You're telling me to believe in God when we haven't seen a miracle of biblical proportion for thousands of years. And so I'll tell you what we're going to begin as follows. We're going to begin with a fantastic reading, Rabbi Yecheskel Landau. There are many Landaus that come from descendants of this Rabbi Landau. He was a rabbi of Krakow, a very prominent sage, scholar, and author about 200 years ago. And so this is a talk that he delivered, and it's he included in his book, the Noda B'Yehuda. I'm going to read a little reading here. The link that I gave you, if you figured out to open it, you could open it. Otherwise, I'll do the reading for you from English. And this was after a tremendous episode that happened. The city of Belgrade was defended and was won by the Austro-Hungarian Empire, of which he was a subject, and they very successfully, very quickly fended off the Ottoman forces, the Turkish forces, and it was seen then within the Jewish community as nothing short of a miracle. It was their way of saying that this was a justified war, and the Jewish community was able to continue and live in peace. And so he talks about miracles of biblical proportion. And this is his talk. I'm going to read it for you here. The message he's going to explain basically is, I'll just give you a little snippet, that for every, his point is this, for every miracle of biblical proportion that was performed in biblical times, there was another way to achieve the objective by more natural means. Okay? It's not that the miracle is the only way to achieve the objective. And we'll elaborate just a little bit more after we read his reading, and we'll see what he's getting at. In other words, what he's going to get at is that a miracle is making a statement more than achieving a certain result, desired result. What's the statement that the Torah is here to make? And I'm going to read his from Rabbi Landau, sage that lived from 1713 to 1793. And here it is. When Joshua arrived to conquer Israel, he's going to be talking about the miracle of the falling of Jericho, the walls of Jericho. When Joshua arrived to conquer Israel, the land of the seven nations, people could have suspected that God did not instruct him to do so. Although God told him, every place that the sole of your foot shall tread upon, I have given it to you, as it says in Joshua 1:3. Nevertheless, the nations could have argued that this was false and that Joshua was coming to misappropriate their land by his own might and the strength of his people. This is why Jericho, the border city and the first city to be taken, was not conquered by natural means. Jews did not scale its walls, crash its gates, or lay a prolonged siege until the starving inhabitants would be forced to open the city gates. Rather, they walked around the city 7 times, sounded their shofars, and the walls miraculously fell. As the verse says, it's quoting now from Joshua, the people shouted when they blew the shofars. And it came to pass when the people heard the sound of the shofar, the people shouted with a great shout, that the wall fell down flat, so that the people went up into the city, every man straight before him, and they took the city. With this, all the nations saw that this was not a natural conquest and that human prowess was not responsible for it. They realized that it was a divine miracle and that God willed that Joshua and the Jews take the land. We do not find Joshua conquering any other fortified city through such miraculous means. This is his final few lines here from Rabbi Landau. He conquered them with normative warfare. God already broadcasted at the outset of the conquest that Joshua was a divine messenger with respect to this war, and it was unnecessary to repeat this message each time. For a legitimate messenger of God would not contravene God's wishes and would not conquer that which God did not command him to conquer. Okay. What's Rabbi Landau saying? Jericho's walls didn't fall in a biblical Wuhan, this whole miracle, not because they needed to get into the Jericho. They needed to get into many other cities, and they got into them. And God allowed them to succeed, and they got into each one. But the statement that was to be made by the first one was in order to broadcast a message that the Jewish conquest of the land of Israel was not a search for power, was not for dominion, but it was at God's behest. God said, and that's why we did it. Every miracle of biblical proportion, Rabbi Landau makes the case, the splitting of the sea. You didn't have to split that sea to get to the other side. You could have found ships, abandoned boats on the side of the thing. Something with more natural, that resonates more within the norms of nature. The 10 plagues were not necessary to get Pharaoh to have a change of heart, and so on and so forth. Everyone, it's not to achieve the result, it's to make a statement. And once the statement has been made once, God says the statement's been made. Now I rely on you to pass on, to convey this message to your descendants, as we do so eloquently on Passover night, at the Seder night. That's our job, to convey a message. The Exodus, the splitting of the sea is to tell God wants to make the statement that you know that I intervene into nature. I don't just let it run its course, but I'm hands-on. Once I know that, I know that. And the 10 plagues, it's not the time now to unpack them all, but it was all to broadcast a message, to make a statement. The statement needs to be made once, and that's enough. So we're here to teach us a lesson. So that's the first point we want to get. That's the first point we want to get to. And how are we doing on time? Okay, we still have another 2-3 minutes. I'm going to get to 2 other points here. No more text. But here, let me put it this way. We're all amazed by miracles. Miracles are fantastic. It's fantastic. It shows God's in charge. But hold it. You're making a greater statement when God could achieve, if God really wants to make a statement of his control and dominion of this world, there's a greater statement that can be made if God works through this world, through the rules of this world, rather than veto power over this world. Because veto power means you couldn't get your opponent to comply and you had to smash it. That's a miracle of biblical proportion. It shatters nature. It's almost as if to say nature just would not bend. It would not subscribe to God's plan. And so if we're really going to make a statement of God's control, of God really taking, being hands-on, real hands-on means working and allowing the world to work with you and arriving at the results that you wish to arrive, and to heal the sick, we just came from Purim, and to allow the people of Israel to be saved from Haman through what? A series of events that we realize that God is orchestrating them all, and that shows a greater, so miracle, shmiracle. When you're making a greater statement, when we can show that God is actually not needing to shatter the world, but a more mature approach is, where God says, finally, the world has come away and has developed somewhat, and I can achieve the result of healing and of so on through the world itself. And I want to finish with one final point. When a child comes to a parent with a math problem from their homework and says, Mom, Dad, what's 15 times 3? Okay, what's the smart thing to do? To give them the answer? Or you try to work with them to allow them to figure out the answer? Well, obviously, you want to work with them, because then you've given them a tool. You've teaching them how to fish. You didn't just give them a fish. Things that we earn and become integrated because it worked through us, not just thrown at us, are things that are much more internalized and have a lasting impact. Look at how somebody treats their money when they've earned it versus somebody that won the lottery. Okay, that's the difference. It's people that just win it, haven't earned it, they haven't integrated a healthy approach to the value of what they have. The Torah, it's fascinating. Mere verses after the most unbelievable miracles, the Torah straight up continues the narrative of the Jews disobeyed God. And you're looking at it and you're flustered. You're like, how in the world can you disobey God when you just saw the sea split? Yes, it's fantastic, it's phenomenal, but you know what? That is human nature. When something didn't work within me, it was thrown at me. No matter how fantastic it is, no matter how big of a spectacle it is, it does not really integrate into who I am. And miracles, turns out miracles was a necessity to convey and broadcast the message, but not the first choice. It's not the ideal. The ideal is when we can find God in and through nature, and we can find the unbelievable events and how our life unfolds, and we can see the hand of God very delicately and gently guiding us from behind the scenes and orchestrating things the way they are. So, in short, the takeaway from here, God's hands-on. All the messages that we've learned from the biblical miracles are as true now as they were then. But one thing that we can really, we've matured since then, and that is that we're not anymore the child the parent is just telling them answers, and the child barely learns anything from it. But we're on our own. We can find God through everything that's happening in our life, through the natural means and through the ordinary life that we have. And God should give healing and blessing to our world, which we need so desperately. And may it be speedily in our days. And when it does, may we recognize the hand of God in this healing process as well. Thank you for joining. I'm going to stop the recording. You're welcome to if you want to just throw in a question or two, you're welcome to. Otherwise, we'll check out.